Welcome to Future Focus Worcester. Future Focus Worcester is a special program right here on Unity Radio, Unity 979. This is Community Connection. I'm Ernie Floyd. And the Future Focus Worcester program is an actionable, forward-thinking urban development project that we want to discuss that's taking place right here in the city of Worcester. We're sharing in advance the questions with our city councilor as well as our school committee members. And starting off our set in reference to Future Focus Worcester is Robert Bilotta. Robert Bilotta, welcome to Future Focus Worcester.
Thanks, Ernie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being a part of it. Hey, I remember when we came up with this idea with the Future Focus show, and I reached out to all the city councilors, school committee members as well, and city manager and the mayor. And the thought was a good idea for Unity Radio as a community-based radio station to be an asset to the city as another component for media to inform the people here in the city of Worcester the fact that there's a lot of things that's taking place in the city of Worcester.
Yes.
And I understand the fact that through economically and all the challenges that family members go through and professionals and everyone else that's go through, and something might get slipped by, you may not be aware of something. And so we thought that Future Focus Worcester would be a good opportunity to bring you, newly appointed city councilor, congratulations.
Thank you.
And come up with and share some information with us about the three questions that we're going to pose to you, okay? So let's start with the first one. The first one is sustainable infrastructure and housing, okay? As Worcester continues to grow, what specific initiatives are you supporting to ensure new development includes affordable housing while also building sustainable and walkable neighborhoods?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things, and that's what I, really ran on, was affordable housing for Worcester. The city has the inclusionary zoning policy that was passed a few years ago that mandates that if a building of a certain size is being built, 12 units or more, that some of the units have to be affordable. I'm always going to and continue to push for carving out more units at what they call a deeper affordability, like 30% AMI, area median income. So we're seeing a lot of construction in Worcester, a lot of market rate apartments being built, and we certainly need some of those. But I think we really could do better when it comes to moving the needle on more affordable housing, especially for seniors, for people with disabilities. I've done a lot of work in that arena. And to the city, to our credit, we are over by the old boys club, the wind development that's going to be senior housing. I know Colony Retirement Homes is set to be doing some redevelopment, but we got to make sure that those units that we keep, and keep affordable units and also build more for folks, for seniors that are on fixed incomes, and for working families too. We really need more working family housing. So the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is another great tool that the city has. And for developers that don't want to build affordable housing, they invest money into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So we were fortunate to get a big investment in that from ARPA dollars back during COVID. But the Affordable Housing Trust Fund kind of pot, I'll say, is the monies they're being used, which is good. But I think it's important that we work to maintain the amount of funding there. So I think taking a look at what can we do with the inclusionary zoning to maybe bump up what developers pitch in when they don't want to build affordable housing. Right now it's at 3% of construction costs. Housing advocates, when inclusionary zoning was being discussed during council, many affordable housing advocates wanted 5% of construction costs. So I think there's room to re-explore things and see what we can do to really support affordable housing construction, but also how supporting naturally occurring affordable housing.
Yeah, when it comes to affordable housing, you mentioned a lot of different things there in reference to making sure these developers and these investors who come in, who find Worcester to be a viable entity for their portfolio, of course, and at the same time not leave the people who've been here behind.
Yes.
Okay? So when it comes to the affordable housing, as you mentioned, all the different procurements and the policies and that are in place, I'm wondering, what was there prior? Was it a strong initiative initially before Worcester became this huge attraction to investors? And if so, what is it? And also, what is the new amendments that's been made because of this huge interest in coming into Worcester?
Yeah, I think, that's when the inclusionary zoning policy was really put forward back in, I want to say 2021, 2022, kind of in response to seeing all this development coming into the city and saying, hey, this is good, but let's make sure that we try to make sure that we get some housing for our community as well, right? The majority of working folks in Worcester the Worcester median income is around high 60s, 60,000. But if you look at the median income for Worcester and surrounding towns, it almost doubles. So that's sometimes what a lot of affordable units are based off of, the income from all the area, not just the income for Worcester. But I think, that again, that's how the programs are designed. But I think there's more we can do to say, when developers come in, can you build a few units at deeper affordability? And I've managed to do that with a new development that's happening down in the old Haywood building down in the Canal District. And it really wasn't that hard. We just sat down and had a conversation, and we're excited to see new development in the Canal District, and I'm happy to support it. And they were willing to say, like, all right, let's see if we can make 3 really deeply affordable units. And if we could do that with every development, we're gonna be chipping away at the housing crisis, because that's what it's going to take.
I know we're talking about affordable housing. Once again, joining us is Robert Bilotta. You listen to Future Focus Worcester. I'm Ernie Floyd, Unity 979, Worcester's Community Connection. And when it comes to affordable housing, that is what our discussion is in the walkable neighborhoods, it all plays a role when it comes to, okay, you're attracting more people to the housing, making it affordable, and so that people here who may want to transition to as well, to make it so it's viable for them to as well. But when it comes down to that, then there's a ripple effect that takes place. Okay, if you're going to attract more people, that means more wear and tear on the roads. You're going to attract more people. That means that our infrastructure here is going to take a beating as well. And so the question comes down to, when does the sewer and the main department comes into play to say, okay, you guys are pitching all these buildings in this housing and stuff, but our infrastructure, as far as when it comes to sewage and it comes to the drains and it comes to our main water system here, can it handle that? And also, are we keeping up with the capacity when it comes to our roads? Because our roads are in pretty bad shape. And that's because of the fact that times have changed. When before you should have your rush hour in the morning, have your rush hour in the evening, and then in between there used to be calm. But nowadays it seems as though it's busy all day long.
No, I Worcester's, that's how Worcester's growing for sure. The traffic. I think, and that's a very good question. And that's a question that I do ask myself sometimes. And I'm sure it's been asked before, is our infrastructure keeping pace with the development? You know what I mean? And it's a bit of kind of, I'll say, a catch-22 kind of, because you want new development to grow our tax base, which will in turn help with some of this. But again, the development seems to come,
provided that's being maintained.
Exactly. We've had a hard winter for sure. And it's, I think the infrastructure is something that we need to keep an eye on. And the city has the integrated water management plan, which is a very lengthy document, and Worcester has some pretty old infrastructure. And we're working on we saw it this winter too, when we had the really bad cold snap early on.
Yeah, some main breaks.
And you had some main breaks. So, I know DPW is working on, as these systems are aging out, working on replacing them. But it's true. We need to make sure that we're not overloading our infrastructure. And that's, responsible growth. We got to take a look at, growing, but not going out over our skis.
Yep. So thank you once again. Sustainable infrastructure and housing. That's what we're talking about. I'm Ernie Floyd once again. Robert Bilotta joining us as City Councilor. And the question was, as Worcester continues to grow, what specific initiatives are you supporting to ensure new development includes affordable housing while also building sustainable and walkable neighborhoods? We're going to come back to that question in a second, but now we're going to move on to the next one, economic opportunity. What steps is the council taking to ensure that local, minority-owned, and small businesses directly benefit from the city's ongoing redevelopment projects?
Yeah. So, since I've started on council this past year, one thing I've been working on is communicating with like inspectional services and fire code to make sure and learn more about how, because often, a lot of times small businesses you'll hear that there's, all the different hoops that they have to jump through, or just checking the boxes to make sure that their business is safe. But also I think there's working on ways, how can we streamline that for businesses and making it easier for them, and making sure that what they're hearing from code aligns with what fire needs and vice versa. Sometimes, I've talked to some business owners, they'll hear, different things from different departments. And I think what we're trying to do, and I know the city manager is working on this too, is trying to kind of get all those on the same page. And we have, some new staff, and I know inspectional services is working really hard in the fire department as well. But I think it's one, how can we make it easier for folks, for local folks to support open small businesses, and also how can we bring people in to support their small businesses. And I think that's where all the cultural programming that we do, especially in downtown Worcester, the Canal District, Shrewsbury Street, District 2 has a lot of great, neighborhood business corridors. But I definitely want to do more to support like the folks on Lincoln Street, folks on Hamilton Street that are opening small businesses. And I think it's one, making sure that we're applying regulations across the board and making it easier for folks to open. But the city's economic development department under Peter Dunn does a lot of great work. They have a lot of business grants, micro grants, also facade improvement grants, which is really great to help folks that are on the first floor of businesses. So there are a lot of grant opportunities out there, and they have grants for women and minority owned businesses, which is great. Because again, so many of I think that's the great thing about Worcester. So many of our local businesses are often started by immigrant communities, and that goes back for generations, which is, it's great to see. And it's great to see that continuing, like on Millbury Street, you'll see new folks coming in, opening their businesses. So it's always great to see that, but I think there's more we can do for sure.
Yeah. And I'm just, from my experience, and my ears get out in the city of Worcester from time to time. And on my left ear, I hear discussions with city officials saying how welcoming Worcester is and how we invite small businesses and businesses in general to start up here in the city of Worcester. Then on my right ear, I hear in the other instances, okay, when the people are in that position, they want to go down to the code department, and then all of a sudden they get down there, and it's not this welcoming that you think you would get welcoming, because of the fact that if you have an onslaught of people, we'll say, whether it's small businesses, minority businesses, or whoever, in one instance you're welcoming them, at least that's what they're saying. Then you get down there, it's not the welcome that they perceived or thought that was going to take place. All of a sudden they're sending you over here, they're sending you over there.
Exactly.
And sometimes people who may not know how to ask the right question may be sent somewhere else as well. And then also overspending other different expenditures in a manner whereas they find out later they didn't have to spend that. So I'm just trying to figure out, what is the relationship between the city who's saying, it's great, start your business. Are they talking to the people who are in charge of who's issuing those permits as well? But when we come back, we're going to have that discussion, okay? So we're going to continue on our economic opportunity, and then we're going to go back to our first question a little bit, and we're going to talk about the walkable neighborhoods as well, okay? So once again, this is Future Focus Worcester. I'm Ernie Floyd. Joining us is Robert Bilotta. He's a city councilor right here in the city of Worcester, and we're talking about initiatives and development and talking about how we're supporting the city of Worcester. So welcome back. Come on back right here on Future Focus Worcester on Unity 979. Worcester's Community Connection.
Hey, this is Ricky Duran, and you're listening to Unity Radio on 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection.
Hey, what's up, Worcester? It is Jacqueline Carr, and I'm inviting you to be inspired with me each weekday morning starting at 5 a.m. with the Jacqueline Carr Show on Unity Radio. I'll get you going with the motivating words, special guests, and the absolute best inspirational music, and a few other surprises. But you got to tune in to Unity Radio every day at 5 a.m. to get your praise on. It's the Jacqueline Carr Show from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. right here on Unity Radio 97.9, Worcester's Community Connection, and also streaming on WUTY.org.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Graham Anderson, also known as Positively Suzanne, host of Black in Business, Thursdays at 5 p.m. on Unity Radio 97.9. Black in Business is a series of conversations with influential members of the Black business community. These entrepreneurs knows what it means to risk everything to create successful businesses and spark positive changes in the community. So join us. Again, I'm Suzanne Graham Anderson, also known as Positively Suzanne, right here on Black in Business, Thursdays at 5 p.m. on Unity Radio 97.9, Worcester's Community Connection.
Support for Unity Radio 97.9 FM is provided by United Way of Central Mass, aiming to improve the community and break the cycle of poverty, and the Wusaks Foundation, seeking to make dreams come true for families in areas of education, social justice, recreation, and conquering cancer. Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection.
Activa la radio y Unity Radio 97.9 FM te invitan a escuchar el bloque latino todos los sábados de 7 de la mañana hasta la 1 de la tarde por los 97.9 FM en la ciudad de Worcester.
You're listening to Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection.
And welcome back to Future Focus Worcester. I'm Ernie Floyd, and joining us is Robert Bilotta, the Worcester City Councilor, right here in the city of Worcester as well. And the show is designed actually for to allow three key questions to be asked in reference to the development, urban development, and the forward thinking of the city of Worcester. And Robert Bilotta, who's now a newly appointed city councilor. Congratulations.
District 2, yes.
Okay. And before we get into the questions again, okay, let's talk about your district. There's two types of districts. There's a district with a number, and there's a district that's at large. Which one are you?
So I'm District 2. So the city of Worcester has 6 at-large councilors. Well, 5, the mayor is an at-large as well. And then there's 5 districts in the city. So, I'm
so
District
those
2.
so when people hear your number and or people hear at large,
yeah.
what does that all mean?
Yeah, so at-large just means you're representing the whole city. And district means you're representing a particular district of the city. So I representing District 2.
Okay. And what makeup of District 2?
So District 2 goes from like Hamilton Street, moving north towards like Belmont Hill, Lincoln Street, Shrewsbury Street, up by North High, is the area Lower Grafton Hill, going like Friendly House neighborhood, going all the way down Franklin Street to the Canal District, parts of downtown where we are now. I think we're right on the edge of District 2 where we are here.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Coney Island, not in District 2. But we're close. I know we're right.
But you'll still support it though.
Exactly. Always. But yeah, then it includes some of the Canal District, and a few years back during some of the census redistricting, it now includes Indian Lake.
Okay.
So it's a pretty big district.
Is there a benefit between someone saying, I want to represent this particular district, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or whatever, versus at large? What would pose someone to say, I want to do at large versus district, whatever the number is?
Well, I really see at large as kind of representing the whole city. And I think folks that want to maybe take on more systems change and looking at things in a really broad sense and policy work, things like that will, I think, gravitate towards being at large, or folks that just want to represent the whole city. But I grew up in District 2, lived there my whole life, and really love that section of the city and my community. So I wanted to run for District 2. And I think as a district councilor, you definitely do more kind of hands-on, you know what I mean? You're part custodian of the district, you're part, business supporter, have a lot of different hats, but you really get to work more hands-on with residents and community groups. And that's what I really love about the job.
Well, you have some personal interest, of course, because you live there too as well.
Exactly.
And it makes sense. When we started out the show, we started out with sustainable infrastructure and housing. And I asked you the question as Worcester continues to grow, what specific initiatives are you supporting to ensure new development, including affordable housing, while also building sustainable and walkable neighborhoods? You talked about the affordable housing. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But what about the walkable neighborhoods? I want to get back to that part.
That was another, both times I ran for council, that was a big part of my platform. And, Worcester's growing. We're having more traffic, but we need our streets to be safer for pedestrians, for cyclists, for folks like myself that use wheelchairs and have, mobility challenges. I think it's really important to really, fix our sidewalks, number one. And that obviously being in New England is, a challenge, but I think there's more we can do to streamline that work. And I know the Worcester 311 app is there, but I think that's where I'm looking forward to the warm weather to be able to get out there and really see where the sidewalk issues are. But, so that's like when you zoom in, right? But when zooming out, it's about improving public transportation in the city as well. I'm the chair of the Public Service and Transportation committee for the city council. So we just had a meeting with WRTA administrator, with the city's Department of Transportation and Mobility, to talk about the city's mobility action plan. And in that plan, there's a lot of different goals, whether it's supporting fare-free transportation that WRTA has, which has been great, ridership's up, and then there's also goals making improving crosswalks that aren't at traffic lights. They call those the non-controlled crosswalks. But then it's also, if improving the WRTA service system, right? Maybe the way it is now, it's like a hub and spoke model where all the routes go to the hub and then go back out. But there's things called like cross-town service, where the bus never goes to the hub. It goes from point A to point B, and then you can transfer to other buses. That's what a lot of other cities have. Worcester's, hub and spoke system, I think, a little antiquated, and I think but where the drive is to change that. So I think improving public transportation.
So you may have answered the third question, which is community and transit connectivity. Okay, and the question is, looking ahead, how can we better connect our neighborhoods to downtown, biotech, and educational hubs through improved public transportation and cycling infrastructure? So you pretty much hit on everything. And one of the things I noticed over the years was the curb cuts. It shows outstands huge because of the fact that one time the curb cuts were just flat off the curb when you're about to walk off the curb. Now you have those little ramps now.
Yeah, that
will cut into the curb. So I can at least say that this has been some transition in that regards.
Yeah, no, it's good for that, but we still need to do more for improving accessibility for folks, making sure our sidewalks are safe, making sure our crosswalks have the audio signals for folks that are visually impaired or blind, and making sure that our sidewalks are safe and clear in the wintertime. I know it was a big thing in the Globe recently this past winter. That's something that Worcester could definitely do better with. And I always ask people to be good neighbors and shovel your sidewalks. But when we have several feet of snow on the corner, I can understand it's hard to do that. And that's where I think, really push DPW to try and help out residents where they need it. But yeah, making sure our downtown core area, our sidewalks are safe and clear is important.
Yeah. Is the city that big, or is the fact that we have a lot of this, we're having this discussion about improvements in the city of Worcester, and there's always discussions about the improvements in the city of Worcester. And we'll say you finally address something that's been aching and breaking for a long time, and you put the necessary resources into it. And by the time you're done with that, you move on to something else. Is it that fast, or is it that slow? Whereas all of a sudden when you move on to something else, that same thing that you improved a year or two ago is now down. In other words, do we find ourselves chasing ourselves because of the fact that I can only imagine some of us have been to other cities. We get on the plane, we go to other different communities and cities and the bigger cities, and they go like, wow, it was so beautiful in Chicago. It was so beautiful in New Orleans, or different parts like that, different portions like that. And you come back to Worcester, you're like, oh my God, look at this place. And we're the second largest city. You got a lot of money that comes into the city. We're talking about housing development. We're talking about streets. We're always constantly talking about street improvements. Always constantly talking about housing. Is the city that big that we're not going to be able to catch up with ourselves, you think? Or we're just going to be this hamster on the wheel constantly chasing ourselves?
I think some of that is true, because that's just the nature of the construction and wear and tear in the city. However, I think we can do a better job of focusing on particular areas. But a lot of the times, what I'm learning and what I've learned over the past few years is that some improvements, it'll take like a policy change, right? Or maybe really some major road redesign to make our roads safer. And folks will go to a city on vacation and they'll love how walkable it is. But yet when you try and do that in Worcester, a lot of folks will pull their hair out because they don't want to see the roads change or traffic. But so I think there's things that we can do, especially in corridors, to make it safer, more inviting for pedestrian, and whether it's seasonal stuff, closing certain streets down to open them up for pedestrian use. I know they do that in New York City in the 5 different boroughs during the summer. Every year or every week, there'll be a different street shut down just for a weekend. So doing things like that, I think, can really open up and support our small businesses, make things more walkable, and make it safer, because right now it's hard for pedestrians and for people driving too, just because the increase in traffic. We also have people on their GPS now finding those cut throughs through our neighborhoods, and that's a real issue with speeding. But I think supporting, having these long range plans too, which I think has been good that the manager's rolling out these plans, but we need that support on council to support whether it's the rental registry or whether it's, complete streets or road redesigns. That's where we need council to really kind of look forward and support these initiatives.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me, because it's very important that we ask these questions and to our city officials. Okay. And so that those that are listening out there will get an understanding of what's going on when it comes to the urban development, when it comes to the city of Worcester, because I can only imagine in some instances, some people are going to say, "Whoa, I see some improvements over there. This is great." And also people may be saying, that place over there in that section probably needs a little bit more, bring a little bit more attention. But it'd be nice to see if, is there a report card that the city grades itself in reference to, or to the people, the residents here get a chance to let's grade the city in reference to the overall city, downtown, what it looks like, the mobility in our communities, the trash removal, the snow removal, the improvements of our streets, the potholes and everything else. Is there a system in place where the residents get a chance to really be able to measure and also respond to some of the different things that they wish to talk about when it comes to city officials and it comes to this?
Yeah, no, I know, the city council, does the manager review every year. And I know some councilors have opened that up to their constituents saying, hey, reach out to me. What do you think about ABC? And help them, grade that. But I think when you go to neighborhood meetings too, that's how you get a lot of feedback from residents. But it's definitely no short of feedback from residents, right? Especially online and things like that. But that's good. We need it. We need to hear what's going on. We need to hear where their issues are and where we can improve. But to my knowledge, it's really been up to individual district councilors how they manage that. But I'm working on having quarterly District 2 community meetings and inviting folks to come out and talk about whatever is on their mind, whatever issues they're having or projects that they'd like to see improved.
Robert Bilotta, thank you for joining me on Future Focus Worcester. City Councilor, District 2, how does that sound?
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay. For those who want to get in contact with you that are in District 2, how can they reach you?
Yeah, sure. So my email address is bilotta@worcesterma.gov. Also have Instagram, Bilotta for District 2, and same thing on Facebook, Robert Bilotta for District 2. But please reach out. Any questions? Always looking to work with folks and work on improving our community.
Thank you. And any way Unity Radio can help you, you know what to call us.
Thank you, Ernie. Appreciate it.
You got it. Robert Bilotta, once again, District 2, City Councilor, City of Worcester. This is Future Focus Worcester. I'm Ernie Floyd. We're going to come right back with the school committee opinion and their questions in reference to how to move the city forward when it comes to education. Once again, you listen to Unity 979, Worcester's Community Connection.
Unity Radio. Worcester, we've got you.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Q, host of the Woo 508, and I'm here with
your girl Liza, Miss Consistency.
And it's your girl Chantel in the building.
Yes, y'all. Go ahead and follow us everywhere. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, the Woo 508. That's THEWOO 508. Woo!
Roll me a phone. Step into the roof. Now you're in the zone.
Recreation Worcester is a free year-round program for youth run by the City of Worcester. The program enriches this city's youth in athletics, arts, academics, and social-emotional learning activities. Food is provided for free of charge for all youth participating in the program. Learn more at the Worcester Recreation website, www.worcesterma.gov/recreation-worcester. That's www.worcesterma.gov/recreation-worcester.
We are Lions International, the world's largest service organization. We are volunteers committed to strengthening our communities and supporting those in need, one act of kindness at a time. For more than a century, Lions have been serving a world in need, right here in our community and around the world. Lions International makes the impossible possible. This is your invitation to join us, because the only thing missing from our mission to make a difference is you. Visit lionsclubs.org to find a local Lions Club near you.
Tune into the Sustaining Life with Susan Hewlett, and together we will find our way to a healthier, healing lifestyle by listening to empowering stories of overcoming our struggles. Join me, Susan Hewlett, on the Sustaining Life every Wednesday from 5 to 6 on Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection. See you soon.
Let's talk, Worcester. Unity 97.9.
Hey, once again, welcome back to Future Focus Worcester. I'm Ernie Floyd. Future Focus Worcester is a chance to an opportunity for our city councilors and our school committee members to be asked key questions in reference to moving our city forward. And joining us now is Molly McCullough. Welcome to Future Focus Worcester.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. And we're going to ask you a couple of questions. And the questions that we're going to ask you, well, full disclosure, is the fact we gave it to you in advance, as we give everybody. Yeah. It's not about truth or dare or truth or consequences. We just want the information, and we want the people to know what's going on. The city is moving so fast right now, more so now than before, that those who may not be involved in better get involved, because it's going so fast. The fact that everything's moving right underneath your feet when it comes to education, when it comes to employment, when it comes to the workforce in general, and just businesses overall. So, but you're in education. Okay, so thank you for joining us. So now we're going. Our first question will be: is infrastructure and capacity? As Worcester continues to grow, how is the school committee planning to adapt school infrastructure and staffing to support the influx of new families over the next 5 years?
Well, I think that's certainly a great question. I think there are a lot of layers to that. So first things first, as people may or may not be aware, we are currently in the middle of a process where we are looking at boundary realignments for the districts in order to, alleviate some of that overcrowding and maybe some undercrowding, so to speak, at some of our elementary schools. Basically, your middle schools and your high schools are pretty much at capacity, except for the exception of maybe Worcester East Middle School. But what we really need to do is look at the boundaries in the districts, not just from the capacity size component of things, which is certainly extremely important because we know we have some real issues at some of our elementary schools, but we need to look at where students are going from their feeder schools as well. So one of the things that we're running into is there may be a student that goes to one elementary school, and instead of that one elementary school flowing to one middle school, it's flowing out to 3 different middle schools, which really can cause some disruption for those students and families when they think they're in one district and then they are routed to another, and just want some continuity for those students and families.
Has this always been in place, or has this been restructured in the past?
So it's been in place for as long as I've been around, and I think it's been a very long time since boundaries and districts were looked at. Certainly, I think several years back when they had to close some schools due to budget constraints and, not having the student body base there using the buildings, they had to look at some of those things, but it wasn't necessarily a district realignment or boundary alignment.
Mm-hmm. All right, so those people that may not know what school district that you represent, tell us about your school district.
Absolutely. So I currently represent District A. I've been on the school committee. This is my 6th term. I was originally elected as an at-large member 2 election cycles ago. The structure changed, and we now have district school committee members as well as at-large committee members. So we have 6 districts and 2 at-large members, and then the mayor as the head of the school committee. So it's a 9-person body at this time. Yeah. So that's a lot of the schools in the Burncoat area. Mm-hmm. It includes things like, McGraw and Forest Grove, the Burncoat Prep, Thorndike, Burncoat Middle, Burncoat High, not Wauwicas. So that's just over the line in District B.
So just like I just asked a question earlier, when it comes to this restructuring, when it comes to the school district, okay, same thing applied to the school committee several years ago. Please address that. What happened where the school committee was operating one particular entity, and then someone came in, challenged it, and then you had to separate it to make it into the letters that you have right now in the at-large. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So we were previously operating in the at-large structure, and several years ago, there was the talk of a lawsuit coming at us for the fact that people were interested in looking at the districts to make it more, diverse, a more diverse body. Because in reality, it's true, the majority of people were living in one side of the city that were elected to school committee. And this allowed for there to be opportunity to really give a little bit more equity to the position. Interestingly enough, the diversity didn't necessarily adjust, but we have more representation from certain communities. So I think that's an important component to the realignment. I think all school committee members, though, truly do try to represent each and every school and each and every student and family, because regardless of where your district is, you might have families that go to a school in a different district or vice versa. Burncoat has magnet students. So we have a lot of families that are not residing in District A where I am, but I'm representing all of them, so that's been an important part of that. And I think really making sure we keep our eye on the district as a whole, because we want to be a district as a whole. We don't want to be silos.
Right, exactly. I know I just asked you this question in reference to the infrastructure and the staffing, the influx that's taking place, but with your experience, what seems to come out the most when it comes to parents having concern when it comes to the education system?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes it's really making sure that parents understand what's going on. And I mean, certainly, that one of the most vital roles we've had in recent years is our wraparound coordinators at our schools, because they really are able to connect with families in different ways. And I think if families have the knowledge, it gives them more power to be more involved in their child's education. So I think sometimes it's really that lack of understanding about what's going on that is the biggest barrier and concerns for parents with their child's education. Obviously, there are always concerns to make sure we're providing, special ed services appropriately, and that we're also providing advanced placement opportunities. That's a lot. We really have to make sure we're taking a look at that whole spectrum. And, you touched on infrastructure, and I just wanted to address that quickly, because I think that's an important thing. So there's been a master plan that the schools has been working on for repairs, not just us trying to get new buildings, which of course we are trying to do every year. And we are working on Burncoat and Burncoat Middle now, which is exciting. Can't wait for that to actually be done. But the infrastructure of our schools, we have a lot of old schools, right? And they weren't designed for accessibility for a lot of our students. But I will give a lot of credit to facilities, and the school department have worked to increase the number of lifts in several of our schools. And, even at Burncoat Middle and Burncoat High. And I know the one at Thorndike is being updated. I believe they just put one in at Lincoln Street School, just trying to make sure that students have access to our buildings. That's a really big component of what we're looking at, and certainly in our new schools that has really been addressed.
And they have, and I've seen that as well. I'm at Thorndike School, and yes, the elevators are coming in, the fire system's being restructured like that. Everything's coming up to code. I even heard something, whereas one of the other schools, which I won't mention, the fact that depending upon who designed the school, there was a civil engineer person who designed the school who used to work at prisons.
Oh my!
And design prisons. You probably know what school I'm talking about. And I think there's a couple of structures here in the city of Worcester that kind of reminds you of prisons, and it's unfortunate. That's what the appetite that person had, at the time. So they built it in similar to a prison.
Yeah. And if you think about it, I went to UMass Amherst, and some of the buildings on that campus have that design, and it probably was again like a design flaw. I guess we'll call it now, right? You know what I mean? When it wasn't really designed for future forward education, technology. Right. I mean, you mentioned it at the beginning. Things are changing so quickly. And when with technology, things are changing on a daily basis, right? We, what we thought of last year is, on the forefront is now completely different.
Right, exactly. So the question I asked you earlier, before we go into the second question, is the infrastructure and capacity. As Worcester continues to grow, how is the school committee planning to adapt school infrastructure and staffing to support the influx of new families over the next 5 years? I can personally and professionally can tell you that I'm there in the midst of it, and I see it myself. So they're doing a great job.
Yeah. I think certainly as the school committee, what we're looking at each year, particularly when we get to budget season, if you will call it that, is really making sure that the staffing needs are being met at the schools. And we know that each year, principals meet with district administration, talk about where their needs are. Maybe 5 years ago, their need was more heavily focused in, a core subject, whereas now they might need additional special education support, or, some of our schools with the Chapter 74 programming, making sure that's staffed appropriately. At the elementary schools, one of the things that we're really seeing that had been much more of a focus at the secondary level is, school adjustment counselors, and those social emotional supports are really needed for our younger students as well. So trying to make sure we have a balance, but that we're also staffing our classroom educators appropriately as well. So really it's it's a balance, but we try to do our best with what we are given for resources.
And you probably touched on it, because the future ready education question I'm going to ask you is, what specific initiatives are being prioritized to ensure Worcester Public Schools students are prepared for the city's evolving economic landscape, particularly in the fields such as biotech and technology?
Absolutely great question. And I think one of the biggest things and one of the biggest improvements I've seen over the time on committee is the college and career readiness department that we have in the city, the Worcester Public Schools, really making sure that students not only have access to opportunities like internships and, shadow days, but understanding like how to get involved in those types of programs, how they apply to the Chapter 74 programs, because we know we are a biotechnology city. Things are rapidly evolving when it comes to STEAM, making sure that we're upgrading our science curriculum to start right off in the elementary school, really getting out there and letting kids know what the opportunities are before them, so that they're not just getting into middle school and it's like, oh my gosh, like what are those programs and what do you mean I should apply to these lotteries? Like really even starting at the younger grades. That's, I think, a big part that the Worcester Public Schools have been doing to really make sure there's education around opportunity.
Yeah, and Worcester Tech was a newly built high school years ago that led the charge before they built the new Doherty, before they built the new South. And in the program at Worcester Tech, they started those partnerships with the local businesses, which makes a lot of sense. Okay, you go to tech one period of time, you may have the education component, then you have the trade component the following week, and however they work that together. And it makes sense. Whereas if you work with a partner of a business that's operating in the city of Worcester, who's going to give you the latest and greatest when it comes to that particular trade going forward, so that so you're hitting the ground forward in that particular sense, and you're not missing the boat. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, we're the second largest city in New England. We should make sure that the students coming out of our schools are prepared to go on to these roles, because that's how our community remains sustainable when it comes to these businesses and industries and experiences. I think the other thing that you mentioned, as far as like Worcester Tech, right now, again, we have the Chapter 74 programs at the other comprehensive high schools, but how do we make sure that we are making sure we're marketing ourselves to the business community too? And there's been a little bit of a nice partnership that the administration has with the chamber, where not only do the chamber put on these types of, I guess you'd say, fairs where people can learn, the schools are putting them on now. So they're marketing themselves to the businesses, which is really great. So they know what the students in their schools are doing.
Yeah, because nothing worse than a business saying that, wow, what type of workforce is the schools developing here? Whereas I have this particular business, and for whatever reason, this person can't type, this person can't think for themselves, this person can't perform any of the things that I need for my business. In order for me to grow, I need this type of workforce. And so they're going to ask that question, what's happening with the public schools or any type of entity if they're not being taught? And I think the partnerships that we just mentioned, and spreading 744 across the other schools, and we're going to talk about that when we come back, okay, what 744 means. It's not a bus route here in Worcester, right? No, okay, all right. So when we come back, we're going to come back, and Molly McCullough is joining us. You're listening to Future Focus Worcester. I'm Ernie Floyd on Unity 979, Worcester's Community Connection.
Mr. Telephone Man, there's something wrong with my line. What's up, Worcester? I'm Angela Gray, and you're listening to Unity Radio 97.9, Worcester's Community Connection. When I dial my baby's number, I get a click every time.
Hi, I'm Ernie Floyd, host of the Unity in the Community Show on Unity Radio 97.9. Join me and my guest as we discuss topics on embracing our diverse cultural communities, the music, the arts, and healthy lifestyles. I'm Ernie Floyd, host of the Unity in the Community Show, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. on Unity Radio 97.9, Worcester's Community Connection.
Support for Unity Radio 97.9 FM is provided by Ruth H. and Warren A. Ellsworth Foundation, established in 1964, focusing on education, social services, and youth aids, and the Mildred H. McAvoy Foundation, giving primarily to health, educational, cultural, and human service organization. Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection.
Unity Radio is streaming at WTY979fm.org. We'd like to thank our listeners and supporters.
Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. Recruit, retain, incubate. WorcesterChamber.org. And the Worcester Bravehearts baseball team. WorcesterBravehearts.com.
Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection.
Hi, this is Raymond Lopolito, the general manager of the Worcester Smiles Football Club, and you're listening to Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection.
And once again, welcome back to Future Focus Worcester. I'm Ernie Floyd, and joining us is Molly McCullough. She's a school committee member right here in the city of Worcester. And what we're trying to do here in this particular program, Future Focus Worcester, is to talk about the actionable and forward-thinking and educational planning that's taking place right here in the city of Worcester. And Molly McCullough is joining us here, and she has 3 questions we're going to ask her. And once again, we gave it to her in advance, as we're giving all the school committee members these questions in advance, because we want to make sure that we get the right information and some good thorough thought that comes to these questions. The first question that we start out was the infrastructure and capacity. As Worcester continues to grow, how is the school committee planning to adopt school infrastructure and staffing to support the influx of new families over the next 5 years? That's going to be really talked about next couple of years because of the redistricting that's taking place. Then we got into the future ready education. What specific initiatives are being prioritized to ensure Worcester public schools students are prepared for the city's evolving economic landscape, particularly in the fields such as biotech and technology? And so we'll begin with that again. Before going to the third question, we talked about Worcester Tech. We talked about 744. And so we alluded to 744. So please give us a description or definition of what 744 is. And then we're going to talk about your district, which is District A.
Absolutely. So the Chapter 74 programs are what all of your technical programs are. So every program at Worcester Tech is a Chapter 74 program, from their biotech programs, their allied health, to their carpentry, mechanics, all of those things. And then at Doherty, we have several Chapter 74 based programs, such as construction craft management, the ETA program, they have one other program there, and it's a biomedical program that they started this year. Then South High has culinary, diesel tech, and one other that I think I'm forgetting. And, what we're hoping with Burncoat is that we'll have even more opportunities there under Chapter 74. So Chapter 74 is a specific type of funding that is allocated for those technical vocational programs. So we know Worcester Tech North has several business type geared Chapter 74 programs. So while they're not all the same at each school, it gives students the opportunity that if they want to apply to those lotteries, if it's not their home school, or even if it is their home school, to get into that particular program, they do have that opportunity. I think we'd all like to see more opportunity for Chapter 74 programs, because we understand how important these trades and also certificate programs are for our students. We talk about the biotech and technology, certainly very important. You also think about how many hospitals we have here in the city of Worcester, and how important those types of positions are that need to be filled, from your CNAs and your MAs and your nurses. These types of programs give some of these students opportunities to gain certain types of certifications, or go on to then different programs that can help them be successful.
And if you go in the past, where before these new schools were built, before South was built, before Doherty was built, before North was built, you have Worcester Tech, Yes. And initially, Worcester Tech was what it is, the technical education school that combined the education and the trade. And that's where you can only go and get that. In some instances, people would favor that. In some instances, people would laugh at it and say, oh, that must be nice. You go to education one week, they do the trade in another. You would think that's something of interest, think that's something as would be a viable entity. But for some reason, some people didn't take it seriously. But then after a while, when they built the new Worcester Tech, all of a sudden, it was kind of like, oh, this is interesting, all right, because of the new facility, and they carried it. Then all of a sudden, it became a waiting list because it got so popular. Everybody wanted to go to Worcester Tech. So did that make sense why you had to expand that 744 into these other schools, or that was always in place?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? I think that we know that we have the need for them, right? So that's why they need to be in there. But I think as these new schools were being built, that was part of the conversation. But I think now we've seen over these last 8 to 10 years how hard it is to get into these schools. And it's really a balance. It's kind of a tough thing, because you want to do it in a way that's fair for students to get the opportunity to go. But then you really do have kids that really, really, really want to be in a trade program. And because there's such an interest in the educational component too, some of those spots, right, they're not what you always considered a traditional voc student. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, like you said, people might have made, jokes about it, like, oh, that's a kid that had, was tough in school, ended up at voc. That's where they went. But, those skills that they're learning at voc and trade are so incredibly important. And we want more and more students to have these opportunities. I mean, we know we've been so fortunate. We have the new Doherty, the new South, new Nelson Place, North was built not that in the distant past. Same thing with Worcester Tech. And we're going to have Burncoat. Ideally, we could have a whole nother technical high school, but the funding for that, I don't see in my near future. I don't know if it will happen ever while I'm alive, but it would be nice to work towards something like that so that more and more students have those opportunities.
Yeah. It's so funny. It was kind of tongue in cheek while I was saying that, because of the fact that people make fun of the trade people in the past. But you know something, when we appreciate them, when you become a homeowner, right?
Yeah.
When you're having an apartment or a house, and all of a sudden you have to call on that tradesperson, all of a sudden you appreciate that person, right?
Yeah,
And they
absolutely.
come up with a repair or fix something.
Hey, they're invaluable. And I mean, and we know what those types of repairs cost us
Of
now
course.
too. So, there's nothing of any type of negative around those tradespeople.
Yeah. So the next one is community engagement. How can community members, particularly those listening to this program, get more involved in shaping the future of district policy and the long-term vision for Worcester schools? But first, let's go into District A, which you represent when it comes to the school committee.
Absolutely. So District A, I talked a little bit before with the schools that are part of that, but it really encompasses, kind of North Worcester in the sense of the Indian Hill neighborhood, the Burncoat neighborhood, the Greendale neighborhood, kind of up to Clark Street School and up to Wawekas Road School, and over to like Nelson Place, Forest Grove, McGraw, those neighborhoods. Again, like I mentioned before, I really do feel that I represent all of our children, but I try to make sure I'm getting to the schools in my district each year in addition to other schools. So that way I'm checking in with the staff, I'm checking in with the students, feeling out what's going on during their day, needs that they might have, ways that I can be helpful, but also really trying to gain a deeper understanding of the curriculum, what goes on a day-to-day basis, because how can I say that I'm helping to make decisions about the schools if I'm not getting into our schools and seeing what's really happening and gaining a better understanding? So that's as far as District A goes. But again, want everyone to know that I'm always approachable regardless of what district that you live in, because I want to be able to help you if you have something you need or have an idea. And that's as far as District A goes. But, you asked about how people can get more involved. I think what's really important is school-based involvement to start, right? Like whether it's a PTO or the site council, just having those relationships with the principal and the teachers, that's hugely important. And then going on to things like CPAC. So there's the community parent council, but then there's the special ed parent council, there's the LGBTQ parent council. So there are all different ways that people can get more involved, and that information is on the website. And I know you're a wraparound coordinator. I'm sure you share that type of information with your families. And then, of course, coming to a school committee meeting. So if there's an item that's on the agenda, you're able to come and speak on that item, or you can file a public petition if it's something under the school committee purview, and you'll be able to come and speak on that. Trying to make sure that we're accessible to people is a priority. And I know it's a challenge as well.
Once again, you represent District A.
Yes.
Versus, how many of the letters go up to? 6.
So we have A, B, C, D, E, F. So B is Vanessa Alvarez. Yeah, thank you. I always screw this up too. I think C is Diana Biancaria. D is Alex Guardiola. E is Kathy Roy, and F is Jermaine Johnson.
Okay. Any particular reason why you chose District A versus any other district?
Because it's where I live. So I have to be there or I would have had to move. So I've lived in the Indian Hill area since 2017. I grew up in like the Titanic Square, Newton Square area, but I've lived over in the Burncoat area for quite some time now.
Okay. I can't emphasize any more than the fact that this redistricting, this realignment is going to take place. And how can people get in contact with you to find out more information about that? Because they're looking to make those changes, those moves finally in 2027 to 28, I believe.
That is the goal at this time. So I'm glad that you asked that question. So there was the first public listening session forum last week held at South High School. There's going to be another one. I believe it's going to be at Doherty High School. The district has an entire web page dedicated to the realignment, so families can go on there and get more information. If you're ever looking to reach out to me directly, my email is mcculloughm@worcesterschools.net. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. With my school committee pages. And I actually have shared some information on my Facebook page with the link to that website, as well as some of the screenshots from the meeting the other night. Also, people can just email me directly to share some of their insights so that I can bring it back to the committee and to the district. I think it's definitely going to be growing pains, right? Change brings growing pains, but I think it's going to be very positive and really benefit our families in the long term. I think one of the most important things is, unlike what some other districts are doing, we are not immediately saying, okay, your child's been in the school for 3 years, you now have to leave. We're trying to do it in a way that it's going to be progressive if the family doesn't want to move right away.
Well, that's the big thing that's going to take place right now, because you could be living in a neighborhood, and we'll say your friend lives across the street, resident lives across the street from you, and you're going to the same school, particularly right now. And then later on, depending upon the realignment, the person across the street could be going somewhere totally different than where you're going. And the parents are going to be concerned, and the parents are going to ask a lot of questions. And the parents are going to say, why them and not why me, and so forth and so on. It's going to be a lot of stuff. Like you said, change may be the best down the road, but in this process, there's going to be a lot of questions being asked and concerns.
Absolutely. But, as you asked earlier, I think we have to be realistic about how many students we're going to have and how many families we're going to have as new housing is being built, and we continue to work towards affordable housing solutions. And, federal policies may change, and we have people back that have left and, things of that nature. But we really need to be forward thinking, and it needs to be long term. A lot of great questions were asked last week about, are they utilizing census data? Are they taking into these housing projects that are being built? All things like that are really important in the process.
In the end, what do you really hope to accomplish when the dust finally settles?
I just think that my hope is that we accomplish an easing on the burden of overcrowding at some of our schools, but also things that make more sense for families. So, like you said, maybe you and your best friend are, let's say, at Chandler Elementary, right? Because that's really the example, one of the biggest examples. And you go there together, but then you might go off to Forest Grove. They might go off to Sullivan. Another friend might go off to Worcester East. And it's like, how is this making sense? How do we look at those areas and those neighborhoods and make the feeder schools make sense as well? Ideally, the situation you mentioned about this person living across the street won't be what happens. I think it will be more of the general areas. But of course, you're absolutely right. Somebody's could get switched and they might not be happy about it.
Yeah. Well, the consultants that are coming through, this basically their suggestions in reference to the direction where they suggest Worcester should go because of their past experience as far as being involved with other communities around the state. But at the end, if it makes sense, you'll be able to be in a position to make the decisions like saying, okay, it does make sense. Yes. Or you might be in a position to say, it really doesn't make sense. Go back to the drawing board and make some adjustments.
Exactly. And ideally, what they give to us will make sense because it will have the public feedback and the participation, and we won't have to go back to the drawing board. But yes, it's not a done deal based on what they share with us. Right. We are the ones that have to make that decision.
All right. Well, you've been listening to Future Focus Worcester right here on Unity Radio. Joining us was Molly McCullough. Thank you very much. District A School Committee. How can they reach you once again, Molly?
So it's McCullough. So McCulloughm at worcesterschools.net or on Facebook and Twitter.
Well, thank you for sharing that information with me. We're talking about actionable and forward thinking about when it comes to the education plans right here in the city of Worcester. Molly McCullough was joining me here on Future Focus Worcester. Continue success in those meetings coming up. Wear your armor.
Always be alert.
Watch your back. Thank you once again. The Future Focus Worcester right here on Unity Radio, Unity 979, Worcester's Community Connection.